You know, when we talk about true crime, it's often those cases where you have a seemingly ordinary person who hides this just incredible darkness.
Hmm.
And that's really what we're going to dive into today, the story of Charles Cullen,
Yeah.
a nurse who became one of the most prolific serial killers
Prolific, yeah.
in American history.
In history, really.
And it's just bone-chilling.
Absolutely.
It's
yeah.
not just the number of victims.
Right.
It's how he moved through the healthcare system, leaving this trail of death.
Undetected.
Yeah, undetected.
He was so long.
For so long, yeah. So, I mean, what's so fascinating to me about this case is that he doesn't fit,
Yeah.
you know, what we typically think of as a serial killer.
Right. He's not charismatic,
Right.
not manipulative, not in a charming way.
Right.
He's quiet, unassuming. I've even heard shy.
Yeah.
But underneath it all was this darkness
Yeah.
that drove him to do just awful things.
To take the lives of people he was supposed to care for.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
Can you give us kind of a background on his early life?
Sure.
What was his childhood like?
Well, Charles Cullen was born in West Orange, New Jersey, youngest of 8.
Wow.
Yeah, big family. And his childhood, it was, well, I guess the best word is tumultuous.
Yeah.
His dad was a bus driver, and he died when Charles was just a baby,
Oh, wow.
7 months old. So you can imagine that loss.
Yeah.
It had a profound impact, you know,
I would imagine, yeah.
on a young child. And as he got older, things didn't really get any better.
Right.
You know, struggling in school, bullied, he retreated further and further into himself.
I mean, we know he made his first suicide attempt
Yeah,
at just 9 years old.
very young.
That's just heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking, yeah.
What can you tell us about his mental state
Right.
during, you know, those younger years?
I mean, it's clear he was troubled from early on in and out of psychiatric care throughout his, you know, adolescence and early adulthood. Yeah.
And there are reports, you know, kind of disturbing behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, even cruelty towards animals,
Wow.
which paints a pretty stark picture
Yeah.
of someone struggling
Yeah.
with some pretty deep distress.
So in 1978, 18 years old, he drops out of high school
Right.
and he enlists in the Navy.
Yep.
Did that give him any structure, any stability?
Not really, no. His time in the Navy was just as chaotic as his childhood. So he was assigned to submarine duty
Okay.
on the USS Woodrow Wilson,
Wow.
a nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, you know, serving aboard this sub, there's this one incident that, looking back, kind of foreshadows
Yeah.
what's to come. He's found
Okay.
in the missile control room,
Right.
but instead of his uniform, full surgical garb,
Really?
mask, gloves, scrubs, the whole 9 yards. It's like something out of, you know,
Like a movie.
yeah, a psychological thriller.
Yeah, I mean,
Well-
what was his explanation? He never really gave a clear one. It's still a mystery, really, but it does make you think, you know,
Yeah.
about what was going on in his head
Yeah.
and what, you know, maybe what kind of dark fantasies he was having.
That's pretty unsettling.
It is unsettling to think, especially with access to, you know,
Nuclear weapon.
yeah, nuclear weapons.
Well.
It really emphasizes the potential danger there.
Yeah. Yeah, so Cullen's time in the Navy, clearly not the escape he was looking for.
Yep.
He attempted suicide multiple times while he was enlisted.
Right.
And in 1984, he was discharged.
Mm.
Reasons are still kind of unclear.
Unclear, yeah.
What happened next?
Well, after the Navy, he enrolled in nursing school,
Okay.
graduated in '87, and then got his first nursing job at St. Barnabas Medical Center in Livingston, New Jersey.
And this is where it all begins.
This is where it begins.
Wait, hold on. I have to jump in here.
Yeah.
He goes from being discharged from the Navy
Yeah.
for, let's just say, questionable behavior
Yeah.
to being entrusted with the care of vulnerable patients.
Yeah.
How does that even happen?
You know, that's a question that's haunted everyone.
Yeah.
Investigators, the victims' families for years.
Yeah.
The truth is, at that time, there were gaps, serious gaps in the system, you know, for vetting and monitoring
Right.
healthcare professionals. Right. Background checks weren't as thorough,
Right.
and hospitals were really hesitant to share information
Right.
about problematic employees.
Because of lawsuits?
Legal repercussions, exactly.
Yeah. So he was able to just slip through the cracks.
Yeah, he slipped through the cracks.
And the consequences were just absolutely devastating.
They were.
Tell me about his first confirmed murder.
So his first confirmed victim was Judge John W. Yengo Sr.,
Okay.
who was being treated at St. Barnabas
Okay.
for an allergic reaction. This was in 1988.
Okay.
And Cullen injected him with a lethal overdose, IV.
So we know he used a variety of drugs.
He did.
To kill his victims.
Right.
But it seems like digoxin was his weapon of choice.
It was. It was.
Why digoxin?
Well, digoxin is a heart medication.
Right.
In the right doses, can be life-saving.
Right.
But Cullen knew even a slight overdose could be deadly.
Yeah.
And what makes it, I guess, even more insidious is that in overdose cases, it mimics natural heart failure.
Oh, wow.
So it made his crime
harder to detect.
Much harder to detect, especially with patients who were already,
critically ill.
Yeah, critically ill.
So he was essentially using his medical knowledge.
He was.
To make it look like natural causes.
Exactly. He was exploiting his position, his knowledge, to become this kind of silent predator.
Yeah. This is just the beginning.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, this is just the beginning.
This is just the start. Over the next 16 years, he would go on to kill dozens, possibly hundreds, across multiple hospitals.
Wow.
In New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
I mean, it's hard to even fathom.
It is.
The scale of these crimes.
It is.
So let's talk about some of these other hospitals.
Okay.
And these patterns that emerge.
Yeah.
It seems like every time there's any suspicion, he just moves on.
Right. He moves on to a new facility. It's a chilling pattern, really, that you see throughout his career. Get a job, start killing patients.
Yeah.
Suspicions arise.
Yeah.
Quietly resign, move on to another hospital.
Yeah.
Often with glowing recommendations.
Really?
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
I mean, it's mind-boggling that this went on for so long.
For so long, yeah.
I mean, were there any red flags?
Oh, there were. There were red flags.
Any missed opportunities?
So many missed opportunities.
To stop him earlier.
For sure, yeah. At St. Barnabas, there were investigations into contaminated IV bags.
Wow.
At Warren Hospital, a patient even reported him.
Really?
Describing this sneaky male nurse injecting her while she slept.
Oh, my God.
But they dismissed her claims.
Wow.
Yeah, so you have this, negligence, fear of liability, lack of communication, all coming together to allow him to just continue.
To continue on this spree. So let's talk about his victims.
Okay.
Who were they?
Right.
What kind of patients did he target?
So his victims, they ranged in age from 21 to 91.
Wow.
Some were elderly and critically ill,
Mm-hmm.
Others were recovering from routine surgeries, expected to make full recoveries. He didn't seem to discriminate, really.
Wow.
Age, gender, medical condition, it didn't seem to matter.
And there's the case of Michael Strenko.
Yeah.
The 21-year-old recovering from, routine surgery.
Routine surgery.
And Cullen injected him with a fatal dose of norepinephrine.
Powerful stimulant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Strenko's case really kind of shatters that whole mercy killer narrative.
Right. He wasn't just targeting people who were suffering.
It wasn't just people who were suffering, no. There was something darker there.
Yeah.
A need to control, I think.
Life and death.
Life and death, yeah.
You mentioned norepinephrine. Did he use other drugs?
He did, besides the digoxin, the insulin.
Yeah.
He used epinephrine.
Okay.
Which can also be fatal.
Right.
In high doses. He obviously had this deep understanding of pharmacology.
Yeah.
And could manipulate dosages and combinations.
To get his desired outcome.
To get what he wanted.
It's like he was experimenting on his victims. Like they were lab rats.
Yeah.
It's horrifying.
It's truly horrifying. Yeah, it really does make you wonder what was going through his mind. But I think it's important to remember, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about drugs, we're talking about procedures.
Yeah.
But these weren't just, clinical cases.
Right.
These were real people.
Real people.
With families and lives.
Yeah.
Cut short by his actions.
That's right. And it's easy to get, caught up in those details, the drugs. The hospitals, the timeline, all of it.
Right.
But we have to remember, behind each of those data points is a human tragedy.
Absolutely. And it's also important, I think, to understand the context. This was a period of huge change in the healthcare industry. Hospitals, they were facing staffing shortages. Nurses, they were overworked, under pressure.
Yeah.
And so you had this environment where someone like Cullen could, blend in.
Right.
And avoid scrutiny.
So this combination, his personal demons, the systemic issues really created the perfect storm for a predator like Cullen to thrive.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about how his crimes were actually discovered. I mean,
Yeah.
for years,
Right.
he was able to just stay one step ahead of any suspicion.
Right.
How did the investigation finally gain traction?
I think one of the big turning points came at Somerset Medical Center.
Okay.
Where he worked 2002 to 2003.
Okay.
This is where staff finally started to notice inconsistencies with medication logs. His access to patient records, like the computerized drug dispensing cabinets, they show he was requesting meds that his patients weren't prescribed. And a lot of those requests, they were canceled immediately. Or he'd request multiple meds within minutes of each other.
So in hindsight, I mean, those seem like glaringly obvious red flags.
Yeah.
But they went unnoticed for years.
It's easy to say that looking back. But, this is before electronic records were widespread.
Right.
It was much easier to,
to manipulate those paper records.
Manipulate paper records.
Right.
Take advantage of communication gaps.
Right.
Between departments.
Yeah. But eventually the evidence, it just starts to pile up.
It does, yeah.
And the truth becomes impossible to ignore.
It does. And so in July 2003, the executive director of the New Jersey Poison Information and Education System, they issue a warning to Somerset. Based on at least 4 suspicious overdoses. They suggested there might be an employee killing patients.
Wow.
That, coupled with the mounting evidence, finally triggered a full investigation.
So this is where we meet Amy Loughran.
Yeah.
Another nurse, and she's a close friend of Cullen's.
Right.
She plays a pivotal role in his capture.
She does.
What was their relationship like?
So Amy Loughran was a single mom who was also battling cardiomyopathy, a serious heart condition. And she was working those night shifts at Somerset, to get the health insurance.
Right.
And Charles Cullen was hired to help with the workload. And so they developed this close friendship. And Cullen, he would even help Loughran.
Wow.
Covering up her illness, caring for her 2 daughters.
That sounds like a genuine.
It was. Loughran saw him as kind, as supportive, someone she could confide in. But as the investigation into the deaths at Somerset heats up, Loughran starts having doubts. Those doubts turned into full-blown suspicions when detectives show her the documents, the drugs Cullen was ordering. And then she realized,
oh my God,
the horrifying truth.
Her friend was a killer.
Yeah, it's a profound betrayal.
Yeah.
But Loughran, she showed tremendous courage, a strong moral compass. She knew what she had to do.
Yeah.
Even if it meant betraying someone she cared about.
Right.
So she agrees to help the police, gathering evidence, even wearing a wire during a meeting with Cullen.
Wow.
Yeah.
So her cooperation was really essential.
Essential, yeah. Her bravery, her willingness to put herself at risk, I mean, that was key to the investigation.
Yeah.
And so Cullen's reign of terror, it finally ends. December 12, 2003, he's arrested at a restaurant.
Wow.
Charged with 1 count of murder, 1 count of attempted murder.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what happens after his arrest?
So just 2 days after his arrest, he confesses
to
detectives, admitting to the murder of Reverend Florian Gall. Okay.
And the attempted murder of Jin Kyung Han, both patients at Somerset. Eventually he pleads guilty to a total of 29 murders.
Wow.
And attempted murders across New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Though the true number is probably much higher.
Yeah. I mean, Reverend Gall's case, that one is really disturbing.
It is.
I mean, he was recovering well.
He was.
He was supposed to be discharged the next day.
Yeah, the day after Cullen killed him.
Yeah.
And Cullen wasn't even assigned to his care.
Wow.
Yeah, it really dispels that mercy killer idea.
Right.
This was something much more sinister. In Reverend Gall's case, he actually went out of his way.
Wow.
To access the Reverend's records.
Yeah.
To administer that lethal dose of dagoxin. This was premeditated. It wasn't an act of mercy.
This was murder.
It was.
Were there any other cases
that
stood out to you?
There were several, yeah.
That really show kind of the depravity of his actions.
For sure. The case of Ottomar Schramm.
He was 78, recovering from heart surgery at Easton Hospital in 98. And his death, initially, it was attributed to natural causes, but later they found out that Cullen had injected him with digoxin. He really seemed to target the most vulnerable elderly patients, those recovering from surgery.
To make it more difficult to detect.
Difficult to detect, exactly.
A really horrific picture of kind of his M.O.
It is, yeah.
I mean, he wasn't just passively letting these people die.
No.
He was actively searching out victims.
He was.
Using his knowledge to end their lives.
It's chilling.
And it's important to remember, these victims had families.
They did, yeah.
Loved ones left to grieve this unimaginable loss.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about his own family.
Okay.
I mean, he was married, had children.
He was married to Adrienne Baum.
Okay.
From 87 to 93.
Okay.
They had 2 daughters together. But his home life was, well, far from perfect. His wife described him as an alcoholic, prone to rage, even abused their pets.
Wow.
She filed for divorce in 93 and also filed 2 domestic violence complaints against him.
Wow.
Yeah, and those documents really painted a disturbing picture of Cullen. You know, an alcoholic, abusing pets, putting them in bowling bags, trash cans.
Oh, my gosh.
Pouring lighter fluid in people's drinks.
Really?
Yeah. Making prank calls to funeral homes.
Wow.
It's a stark contrast to the quiet guy at work.
Right.
Right.
The unassuming guy.
Yeah, it seems like he was living this double life.
He was very carefully concealing this dark side.
But those cracks in his facade,
Yeah.
they were starting to show.
They were.
And that darkness that was, consuming him at home was bleeding into his professional life.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that serial killers, they often lead
They do, yeah.
these seemingly ordinary lives.
Right.
Hiding their true nature.
Behind a mask.
Yeah. Of normalcy. But even the most elaborate facade, it eventually crumbles.
It does.
And when it does, the fallout can be devastating.
Yeah. Let's talk about the impact of his crimes on the healthcare industry.
Okay.
His case, it exposed some serious issues with hospital safety protocols.
Absolutely. It did. I mean, the fact that he could move from hospital to hospital,
Right.
leaving this trail of victims, it highlighted a huge failure
Right.
to really vet these professionals.
Right.
And hospitals, they were so hesitant to report anything suspicious.
Because of
Lawsuits,
Yeah.
damage to their reputation,
Yeah.
and that culture of silence, it allowed him to operate for too long.
So what changed after Cullen was arrested?
Right.
What measures were put in place to try to prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, Cullen's case, it really sparked this wave of reforms to improve patient safety, accountability in healthcare. And one of the most significant outcomes was Cullen's Law.
Can you explain Cullen's Law? What does it actually do?
So Cullen's Law mandates stricter reporting protocols for suspicious deaths and misconduct. It encourages transparency, accountability, requiring hospitals to report any suspected criminal activity to law enforcement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it also protects whistleblowers
Okay.
from retaliation. So, healthcare workers, they can speak up without fear of losing their jobs.
Right.
Cullen's Law was first enacted in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, but similar legislation has been adopted in other states.
So it's specifically designed to try to prevent future tragedies.
Yeah, it is.
By encouraging healthcare facilities to be more proactive.
Be proactive, be vigilant, exactly. It's a direct response to the failures.
Yeah.
That allowed Cullen to operate for so long. It's bittersweet, but it is a testament to those who fought for justice.
Absolutely.
For accountability.
It's a testament to Amy Loughran, too.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, without her.
Without her, yeah.
Without her willingness to come forward.
He could still be out there.
He could still be out there.
Yeah.
So he receives multiple life sentences.
He does.
He'll spend the rest of his days behind bars.
Right.
Did he ever really offer an explanation?
That's one of the most perplexing parts of this whole case.
Yeah.
Cullen's explanations, they've been inconsistent, contradictory even. He first claimed he was a mercy killer.
Right.
Ending suffering for terminally ill patients.
But, as we discussed, many of his victims
Many of them.
weren't terminally ill.
Not at all.
They were expected to recover.
Right. And then later he claimed that he couldn't remember how many he killed, why he chose certain victims. He talked about being in this fog, blacked out memories.
Wow.
And then he suggested he was driven by this uncontrollable impulse. But he also talked about thinking about killing his victims for days.
So it's hard to know.
It really is.
What to believe.
It is.
I mean, was he truly a mercy killer? Or was that just a way to justify it?
Justify.
Was he remorseful?
Right.
Was he just manipulating the system?
It's tough to say for sure.
Yeah.
Some experts think maybe he had a personality disorder.
Okay.
That affected his judgment, empathy. Others think it was, a need for control. a power thing, a twisted sense of satisfaction in deciding who lived, who died.
It's a question that's still
being debated,
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why this case continues to fascinate people.
To horrify people.
And horrify people, yeah.
You know, it is interesting that you bring up that evil lurking in these unexpected places. I mean, Cullen's case, it really does make you question, who can we trust?
Absolutely.
Especially in these places like hospitals.
It does.
Where we're supposed to be safe, where we're at our most vulnerable.
Right, right.
And it makes you wonder how many other Charles Cullens are out there. How many other healthcare professionals might, have those same dark impulses? It's
a question that haunts, investigators, administrators, the public.
Yeah.
It's impossible to know for sure. But Cullen's case definitely raised the awareness of this potential for abuse in healthcare.
And it's led to, you were talking about Cullen's law.
Right.
It's led to, more background checks, better monitoring, reporting protocols.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We've talked about those systemic failures that allowed him to operate for so long.
Right.
But I also want to talk about, the media attention. I mean, Cullen's story, it's captivated people.
Yeah.
There have been books, documentaries, a movie.
It really has.
Why do you think that is?
I think there are a few reasons, It really taps into our fears about vulnerability, betrayal, and especially in a place like a hospital. We expect healing. We expect care.
Right.
We don't expect to be harmed by the people who are supposed to be helping us.
Right.
And then there's, that classic true crime fascination with the mind of a serial killer. And Cullen is particularly interesting, I think, because he doesn't fit the mold.
Right.
He was quiet.
Yeah.
He was unassuming. Some even said shy.
Right.
And yet capable of such cruelty.
It's those contradictions.
Yeah.
That I think really, really get people.
They do. And it makes him even more unsettling, right?
Yeah.
Because it suggests that evil can wear any mask.
Right.
It can be hiding anywhere.
One of the books, The Good Nurse by Charles Graeber. Yeah. Really compelling look at the investigation.
It is.
And then they made it into a film.
They did, yeah.
With Eddie Redmayne as Cullen.
Yeah, and Jessica Chastain as Amy Loughren.
Right.
It's a powerful film.
Yeah, and I think we have to remember that amidst all this darkness, there are these stories of heroism.
Absolutely.
Like Amy Loughren.
Amy Loughren, yeah.
Her willingness to come forward.
Yeah.
To risk her own safety.
To stop him. Yeah.
That's just incredible.
Absolutely. And the fact that his case led to these changes in healthcare.
Right.
That's a testament to the people who fought for justice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who fought for accountability.
So we've covered a lot today.
We have.
Cullen's troubled life. His chilling crimes.
Right.
The failures that allowed him to operate for so long.
Right.
The impact of his case.
The impact.
It's a story that just stays with you.
Absolutely.
And it reminds us, even in the darkest of times, there's hope.
There is.
There are people out there who are willing to fight for what's right.
There are.
To protect the vulnerable.
Absolutely. And as you continue, exploring the world of true crime, remember that the most compelling cases, I think,
are the ones that challenge us.
Yeah.
The ones that make us face those uncomfortable truths.
Right.
The ones that remind us that line between good and evil, it's not always so clear.
Right.
It can be blurry.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Into the chilling story of Charles Cullen. It is a story that will stay with you.
It will.
And it's a reminder that even in those darkest of times, there's always hope.
Always.
And there are always those who are willing to fight for justice and to protect the vulnerable.